All right, let's take another deep dive. And this time we're ditching the wetsuits and grabbing some tiaras. Because we are headed straight into the drama-filled world of beauty pageants. More specifically, the Miss Grand International controversy that's been all over the headlines.
Yeah, what really gets me about this whole thing is it's like someone threw a spotlight on all this, like tension, like all this stuff that's always been bubbling under the surface of the pageant world is suddenly front and center.
Right, right. You always think of pageants, all glitz and glamour, but I guess there really is a whole lot more going on behind those smiles and evening gowns.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking national pride, cultural representation, even like whispers of corruption.
Hmm.
And this year, it all just kind of exploded at Miss Grand International, which, by the way, is a relatively new pageant on the global scene, but it's been growing super fast. It's based in Thailand.
Okay, so paint us a picture here. What exactly went down?
Well, so the 2024 competition just finished, and let's just say it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Miss Grand Myanmar, Taisunain, she came in as second runner-up, which, sounds pretty impressive on its own, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But, she and her national director, H2 Ant Lin, they weren't happy campers.
So it wasn't just about missing out on the crown then.
Not exactly. See, Thaila, Miss Grand Myanmar, she felt like she was robbed of two other big awards, Best National Costume and Country Power of the Year. Now, you might think, okay, those are like consolation prizes, right?
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about it.
But hold on, because in the pageant world, these things are a really big deal.
Really? Fill me in.
Oh, yeah. These awards, they're all about national pride, showing off your culture on a global stage. Winning them, it can do wonders for a contestant's career back home, even boost the country's image overall. So you can imagine how bummed they were when those titles went to other contestants. Brazil, Ecuador, and Honduras snagged national costume, and Thailand took Country Power of the Year.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I can see why there was tension. But how did this all turn into, like, a full-blown controversy?
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. Picture this. The award ceremony, everything's all fancy, lights are shining, everyone's dressed to the nines. And then, out of nowhere, H2 Ant Lin, Myanmar's national director, he walks right up to Miss Grand Myanmar, and he takes the tiara right off her head.
He did. Whoa, that's a bold move.
Right. I mean, in the pageant world where everything's usually so, like, picture perfect, it's unheard of, it was this total act of defiance, like he was sending a message, something ain't right here.
Right.
But, and here's the kicker, the drama doesn't stop there. H2, he goes public with some pretty serious accusations against Nawat Itzar who's the president of Miss Grand International Game.
Wow. Okay, things are escalating quickly. What exactly was he accusing him of?
He claimed that Nawat, get this, offered him the crown for a cool $25,000. And he also said Nawat had been taking money from Indonesian pageant officials. We're talking straight up allegations of bribery and rigging here,
Yeah.
the kind of stuff that could seriously tarnish the whole competition's reputation.
Yeah, no kidding. If that's true, that's a major bombshell. So how did Nawat respond to all this?
He came out swinging, denied everything, called the whole thing ridiculous.
Hmm.
And here's what I found interesting. He didn't just deny it. He also took some shots at Miss Grand Myanmar herself, like questioning if she was living in reality. Even suggested she should start her own pageant if she wanted to win every title.
That does sound a bit aggressive, like more than just a denial.
Right. It makes you wonder if maybe he was trying to deflect, take the heat off himself.
Hmm.
Or maybe, who knows, maybe it was just pure frustration bubbling over.
So what was the reaction back in Myanmar?
Well, let's just say they weren't buying Nawat's side of the story. Pageant fans there, they rallied behind H2, totally echoed his accusations. They even started calling Miss Grand International a cooking show, which apparently is like their slang for something that's totally rigged.
A cooking show, huh? I kind of like that. It really gets across that sense that something's fishy, like behind the scenes.
Totally, like someone's messing with a recipe and it just ain't right. It shows they don't trust the pageant, maybe even don't trust other systems that are supposed to be fair. And with social media amplifying everything, it puts a ton of pressure on these organizations to do something. And, well, Miss Grand International did respond with a pretty drastic move.
What did they do?
They hit H2 Ant Lin with a lifetime ban from Miss Grand International. They said it was for lack of sportsmanship and business credibility. Yeah, talk about laying down the law, right? Miss Grand International, they wanted to make it crystal clear, you don't mess with them. Don't go challenging their authority or making a scene.
Yeah, a lifetime ban. That's pretty serious. What do you think? Was it the right call?
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, you've got people who are like, good for them, stand your ground, protect your reputation.
Hmm.
But then there are others who think it was way too harsh, like they might lose a whole country of passionate fans. And it also raises questions about what happens to future contestants from Myanmar, right? Will they be welcomed, or will this whole incident, taint their participation?
It's wild how this one event, this tiara snatching moment, has become this huge debate. Fairness, power, cultural differences, it's all tangled up in this pageant world.
That's why this whole deep dive has been so fascinating. We're not just talking about a sparkly crown here. We're peeking behind the curtain. National pride, personal ambitions, money, it all comes crashing together in this elaborate system.
Right. It's like we got a backstage pass and saw the whole machine in action.
Exactly. You've got organizers, national directors, sponsors, the contestants, of course. It's like this intricate dance, everyone trying to navigate all these expectations, rules, and traditions.
And then you can't forget the fans. They travel, they spend money, they're super invested in all of it.
It just reminds you, pageants aren't just about what you see on stage. It's a whole cultural phenomenon with real impact on the people involved. And this controversy, it's exposed some of the cracks, the ethical dilemmas.
One thing that really stood out to me was how cultural differences played a role. Like the cooking show thing from the Myanmar fans, that was a perfect example.
Oh, yeah, for sure. What might be a casual term somewhere can be a huge deal in another culture. It's a reminder to be sensitive, especially when you've got people from all over the world coming together.
Makes you wonder, how much does cultural bias affect judging decisions, even if it's not intentional?
That's a good point, because even though most pageants want to be fair, there's still that subjective element in judging. Personal tastes, cultural backgrounds, it can creep in, and that's a tough thing to overcome.
And then there's the money factor, right? H2's bribery allegations, whether they're true or not. It points to the potential for corruption, the influence of money in the whole system.
Sadly, that's always a risk when you've got big money and power involved. The potential for exploitation. Organizers, whether it's pageants, sports, or even talent shows, they've got to be super careful about that.
It makes you think about the pressure these contestants are under, not just the beauty standards and performance pressure, but also navigating these power dynamics and ethical minefields.
It's a high-stakes world, both exciting and incredibly demanding. Some thrive in it, but for others, it takes a toll.
I gotta admit, this whole situation, it's made me rethink my assumptions about pageants. It's easy to get caught up in the glitz and the show, but it's important to remember the human side, the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Absolutely. Even something as seemingly light as a pageant can reveal so much about society and spark important conversations about power, culture, ethics, and hopefully those lead to positive change.
So, what now? What does this mean for Miss Grand International, for pageants in general, moving forward?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
This controversy, it's definitely shaken things up, forced people to face some uncomfortable truths.
Do you think we'll see any real changes come out of this?
It's hard to predict. Some folks are optimistic. They think this will lead to more transparency, more accountability. Like, these organizations will have to take concrete steps to address those concerns about bias, money, and how contestants are treated.
Others might be more skeptical, thinking it'll all just fade away, back to business as usual.
That's possible too. I mean, pageants have weathered criticism before and they still keep going. It really depends on whether the public stays focused on these issues and whether those in charge are actually willing to listen and change.
This controversy, it's definitely shown us some of the weaknesses in the pageant system, but it's also pushed us to look beyond the surface, to think about the complexities and challenges of this whole industry.
Totally. It's a reminder that even in a world obsessed with appearances, there's always more to the story. And sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones that expose the cracks, the struggles, the real messiness behind the perfect facade.
It's like we started out as spectators and ended up right there on stage with them.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
We got to see the dance moves and the fancy dresses, but also all the backstage maneuvering and the personal stories you don't usually hear about.
And it's kind of amazing how this Miss Grand International thing, it's touched a nerve with so many people.
It's definitely tapped into something bigger than just pageants, right? It's about fairness, being transparent, holding people accountable. Wherever you've got power and subjective judgments, those issues pop up.
So I gotta ask, after going this deep, how do you feel about pageants now? Has your view changed?
Honestly, it's more complicated now. I still see how pageants can be empowering for women, how they celebrate different cultures, and they give a platform to important causes. But at the same time, there are these built-in problems they have to deal with. biases, making sure things are ethical, keeping up with what society values. It's tough.
It's that clash between the ideal and the reality, right? You have these women chasing their dreams, wanting to represent their countries, and then there's this whole system that might be making it harder for everyone to be on equal footing.
And that's exactly why we need to keep talking about it. By acknowledging the problems, we can start fixing them. And hopefully, that makes the whole experience fairer and more fulfilling for everyone.
It makes me think about us, the viewers, the fans. We're part of this too, right? Do we just enjoy the show, or do we demand more from the organizers, more transparency, more accountability?
That's a good question, and it's one we all have to answer ourselves. Do we support pageants that reflect our values? Or do we push for change, speak up about our concerns, hold them to a higher standard?
This whole deep dive, it's been a good reminder that even something as glamorous as a pageant can be a microcosm of bigger societal issues. It's a chance to talk about power, culture, ethics. It's not just about who gets the crown. It's about understanding what's happening behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing is to stay curious, to keep asking questions, to keep these conversations going in a thoughtful and respectful way, of course.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
This look into the Miss Grand International controversy, it's definitely given us a lot to think about. And even though there's more to come, I'm sure this whole discussion about pageantry, it's going to keep unfolding.
Yeah, I agree. And who knows, maybe all this talk will lead to some positive changes, make the pageant world a more inclusive and fair place for everyone.
That's something we can all get behind. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning. And remember, there's always more to discover beneath the surface.